Good afternoon. We will go ahead and get started. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so welcome to this afternoon's session entitled Developmental Relationships. If you have found yourself in the wrong session, then you can click on Sessions over on the left of your screen in the toolbar, and you can explore other sessions that are being offered at this time. But we are happy that you have decided to join us today. Social worker CEUs are approved. I just received an email. So social worker CEUs and attendance prevention CEUs are approved for this session. Participants must attend the entire session to receive those CEUs, and after the conference, a link will be emailed to you for an online evaluation. So we are asking you to complete that evaluation for each of the qualifying sessions that you attend today and tomorrow. And once you complete the evaluation, you will be able to download your certificate for CEUs. We will also provide a certificate of attendance for those of you interested in receiving that certificate. We will just ask for you to complete an evaluation for each session for that as well. During today's session, you may ask our presenter questions by clicking over on the right of your screen. Make sure that session is underlined, and then click in the Q&A, and that will enable you to start typing in your questions. And I will monitor that and let Cynthia know if questions do pop up. So I'd like to thank Cynthia Sorcella for presenting this session this afternoon. Cynthia is a coordinator in the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing at the West Virginia Department of Education. She is one of two coordinators who support and ensure the Communities in Schools model in West Virginia is implemented with fidelity. Our other Communities in Schools coordinator, Tracy Komorowski, is joining us for this session. I believe that Cynthia is taking the lead on the presentation because Tracy had a different presentation. We weren't sure if she would be able to present, but I will let Cynthia take it away and share any more info that you would like about yourself or Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I thank you guys for being here today. And yes, Tracy's here with me. So if something goes awry, we'll get her to jump in and take over. But Tracy and I both work with a program called Communities in Schools here at the Department of Education. And we work together to serve, in the upcoming year, 31 counties that will be implementing the Communities in Schools model. So we're really excited about that, and continue to work together to serve the schools who have that model in their schools. So to get us started, we'll take a look at our objectives for today. We're going to talk about Search Institute's Developmental Relationships framework, and we're going to begin to understand how that framework is implemented and how it works. We're going to explore some of the developmental relationship practices that they have to share with us. We're going to review some of the research about the importance of developmental relationships. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have some time to discuss how this framework might be used in your work. If I was doing this presentation with you, in a room together, we would have a lot of interaction. So what I'm hoping is you will utilize that chat feature when I do ask questions, and put your answers in there, and we'll use those to kind of get a discussion started around some of the topics we'll be sharing today. I did put a little picture there at the bottom called Stop, Jot, and Share. There's two activities we're going to do where I'm going to stop for just a moment and give you time to maybe jot something down, and then hopefully share it in our chat feature here. But like Stephanie said, if something comes up and you have a question, go ahead and put it in that Q&A, and she can interrupt me if I need to answer it then. I'm happy to. But thank you again for being here, and I'm going to start us off with sharing a little bit about what Tracy and I do. Like she said, I'm one of the coordinators here at the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing at the Department of Education, and we work with a program called Communities in Schools. You'll see a couple of pictures here on this slide, and this was a couple of years ago when we were able to do trainings in person. And this was in Huntington when we, the year after we had our pilot program, we added new counties. And if you look at the picture on the right, you'll see a gentleman. His name is Bill Milliken, and he is the founder of Communities in Schools. And you'll see he says, programs don't change kids, relationships do. And Communities in Schools is built on the premise that those developmental relationships are at the core of what this program does and what this model does. You'll see a picture there on the left, and this is you'll see the First Lady of West Virginia, Kathy Justice is there. And then the lady that's on the right, in the picture on the right, is Elaine Wynn, and she's on the National CIS Advisory Council. So they were there to support us in getting this program kicked off. You'll notice there in the middle, the mission of Communities in Schools is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. And if you're not familiar with Communities in Schools, we put a site coordinator in a school, and they are there to do just that. They're there to develop those partnerships that are in the community, bring those resources that are available, and connect those to the students that need them. And the way they do this that we work through is called the Communities in Schools Theory of Change. And this is a diagram, if you take a look here at how that works. And this really sums up the work of Communities in Schools. It links the activities and those practices with those intended future outcomes. By supporting, if you see there on the left, and developing those strong relationships, and then focus on building those social, emotional, and academic competencies for young people, then we see headway in improving that attendance, behavior, and coursework for students. And then when these focused and intentional activities and practices, they begin to guide us towards those intended outcomes, which you'll see there on the right, to increase those graduation rates for students and ensure that students are equipped for college, career, and civic engagement. So I want you to notice here, again, that beginning thing that we see there. That very first thing is to develop those relationships with caring adults and others. And like I said earlier, it's at the core of what we do. So the reason I would like to share with you today about the importance of not just relationships with kids, but those developmental relationships with kids, is because we've seen directly the impact of how these can improve outcomes for kids in school. Take a look at this slide. As we think about developmental relationships and their importance, let's look at this hypothesis, and it's from the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry. It says, what if everything we do to promote children's positive development hinges upon a similarly essential element? What if the efficacy of every policy, program, or intervention is determined by whether such effort ultimately promoted or hindered the active mechanisms associated with such an ingredient, the developmental active ingredient? And if you think of active ingredients, many times we think about something that's in toothpaste. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment and see if anyone could put in the chat, what is that active ingredient in toothpaste? Maybe you've heard it on a commercial, or you just know what it is. What is that thing that's in toothpaste that makes it work, makes it effective? Starts with an F. It's what, yay, good job, Michelle. It is fluoride. Yeah, it's the active ingredient. So, you know, they put in that toothpaste, they put that stuff that tastes good, they put the things in there that will whiten our teeth, they put all these other things in there that are good for us, but that active ingredient is the fluoride. So when we think of all the things that are good for our kids, we think of all the things that are there that we put in place, that active ingredient, that thing that really makes a difference, are those developmental relationships. So we're going to pause for a moment and we're going to do a stop, jot, and share. And like I said earlier, we're going to utilize our chat feature for this. there were two resources that were attached to this session that hopefully you were able to take a look at. But if you weren't, it's no worries. We're going to be able to do this. But I've taken a screenshot of one of the pages in the workbook that you will have access to. And if for some reason you were unable to get access to it, you can simply reach out to me by my email that you'll get at the end, or Tracy or Stephanie, and we'll make sure you get this workbook. But we're going to go ahead and talk through a couple of these questions. So we're going to think about DR, or developmental relationships, in your development. And you don't have to share these in chat if you don't want to, but if you'll just jot them down on your paper, and then we'll share in chat the last few questions. Think for a moment, who showed you that you mattered to them as you were growing up? There may be one person, there may be a couple of people. Just jot that person's name down. Who pushed you to keep getting better? Maybe this was someone in middle school, or someone in high school, or maybe, earlier on, someone that pushed you to keep getting better. Who helped you complete tasks and achieve your goals? Who treated you with respect and gave you a say? Who connected you with people and places that broadened your world? So there's a good possibility that as you're looking at your list right now that you've jotted down, that some of the same questions may have the same person's name. You may have a family member or a friend or a relative that is listed over and over again on here. And you may have, there's a good possibility that you may have a question that doesn't have anybody. You had a hard time coming to think of someone that you could put down for that. But now, if you don't care to put in the chat, which person did you list the most? Was it a family member? Was it a parent? Was it a teacher? If you don't care to put that in the chat, which person did you list the most out of these? Okay, thank you, Jeff. A coach. Okay. Family member. Good. Your mom. Okay. Parents and teachers. An aunt who was a teacher. Okay. Yeah, many times we'll see a lot of the same people. And we were able to answer these questions with that same person. Your husband. Yeah, very good. Parents. Thank you, Esther. Yeah, we have a lot of, we can look back over our life and think about as we developed as, into adults, that we've had people that have come along and helped us through that process. I have one more question. Which person was a surprise in thinking of their influence on you? Did you have anyone that you thought, I never really thought about the fact that they really did connect me with people that broadened my world, or they really did treat me with respect and gave me a say? Did anybody have anybody that kind of surprised you? Oh, thank you, Michelle, a former boss. Yeah. As you look back over, you think about the people. Oh, I like that. A teacher I didn't really like at the time. Yeah. A teacher's aide. Yeah, it's interesting to go back and look and think about the people who have had an influence on us, and it kind of surprises us that they did help us, show us that they matter to them. But these are things we think about when we look at developmental relationships in our development. As we move along, I want to take a look at what makes a relationship a developmental relationship. And as you look at this first quote here, they call out, and this is from the Search Institute, that relationships are developmental when young people discover who they are, they develop abilities to shape their own lives, and they learn how to engage with and contribute to the world around them. I think about so many times how we as adults say, yeah, I know that kid. He's in my third block, or I know that kid. I've seen him on Tuesdays at school or whatever. But, knowing someone and having a relationship with someone is a lot different. And as we dive in a little deeper to what it means to have a developmental relationship, we'll understand why these three things are so important. Take a look at that quote on the right, why relationships matter. As I spoke earlier about the resources you'll have access to, one thing is that workbook that I just took a page from with our discussion earlier, but this quote comes from a research brief called Relationships First, and you will also have access to that as well. But let's take a look at this quote from Relationships First. This first part of the quote discusses the barriers or burdens that many of our students that you work with have. You take a look at that. They have the hardship of poverty, the challenges of parental substance abuse or serious mental illness, possibly the threat of recurrent violence or chronic neglect, or a combination of those factors. We can think of several kids that those are the barriers or burdens that they have. But what they found as you look across that quote is the single most common finding is that children who end up doing well have had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive parent, caregiver, or other adult. And I think most of us, or all of us probably could say, yeah, that is that active ingredient. That is that thing that makes a difference between a kid who comes from, having everything against them to being one that is able to succeed. And I know over and over again, the superintendent, Birch, has talked about, making sure our kids have that one caring adult, that one person that shows up for our students to give them, that chance to work through those burdens or barriers that they have to work through. So as I said earlier, this developmental framework is from the Search Institute, and they are a nonprofit organization that bridges research and practice to help young people be and become their best selves. Communities and schools, like I spoke about earlier, the program that Tracy and I work with has partnered with the Search Institute because of if you remember back to the slide I showed you about the theory of change, developmental relationships is at the heart of what this program is built on. It's the foundation of what we do. So the Search Institute, if you look at this page here, has identified 5 elements that make relationships powerful in young children's lives. You can take a look down that left side: expressing care, challenging growth, providing support, sharing power, and expanding possibilities. These 5 elements work together to provide that framework for what our site coordinators who are in schools and guide the activities and areas of focus in their relationships that they build with the students that they work with. The framework for our site coordinators is also accompanied by what they call a DR360 assessment, which our site coordinators are able to use to evaluate a student's relationships with their parents, their siblings, their peers, their teachers, and other adults that are in their life. So if you are fortunate to be part of a school that has communities and schools, your site coordinator would have access to that. And you can see there at the bottom who the grant that sponsored this project that was worked through. So as we look at the 5 elements here that are in a developmental relationship, we're going to switch over now, and I'm going to show you a real quick video. It's about a 2-minute video. And as you watch this video, I would like you to think about the 5 elements that you see and see if you see them reflected in this story. So give me just 1 minute, and I'm going to switch over and show you our video. It's like a commercial pause.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old, and I was in school, and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." So I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. So I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. He walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "No, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." From that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
Okay, so I don't care how many times I watch that, I still get teary-eyed every time I watch it. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to move us to our slide here to remind us about the 5 elements that we spoke about with the developmental relationships framework. And I'm going to start with the first one. We see all 5 here. We have express care, challenge growth, provide support, expand possibilities, and share power. So as we think about expressing care, show me that I matter to you. If you don't care to put in the chat something you saw in this video that expressed care, that showed him that he mattered. We see some actions here. It could be dependable, listen, believe in me, be warm, and encourage. The teacher told him he wasn't in trouble. Yeah, that definitely showed expressing care. Reassured him. Yeah, I like that because, you saw previously what happens so many times with kids that they say, go to the office, you're in trouble. And that's automatically what a lot of the kids think. He believed in Clinton. Very good. Yeah. Definitely. He really expressed care. He believed in him. He listened to him. He, and talked to him, noticing something positive in him. Yes. So we definitely see one of the elements being expressed here for express care. Yeah, good job, Tara. Yeah, he encouraged and inspired an outlet for him. Yeah. Okay, so let's move to another element. Did you see the element of challenging growth? Push me to keep getting better. Expect my best, or stretch me, push me to go further. Hold me accountable, or reflect on my failures. Did you see this in the video from Mr. Jensen or someone else? Okay, yeah. He took what he felt like was a problem and turned his entire perspective around. Yeah, really did impact his self-worth. I think one of my favorite things he says is, "You're not a problem, you're a drummer." I mean, I'm thinking, how many kids get labeled with different things from teachers or adults, and how huge that had to be for him. Stretched him to practice a skill. Yeah, Cheryl, I agree. He may have never thought about being a drummer, and it was a new skill. He had to really stretch him to try that out. Yeah. How about providing support? Help me complete tasks and achieve goals. Help me navigate or empower, advocate for me, or set boundaries. Did we see this at all in the video? Yeah, I agree. Gave him drumsticks. Really empowered him, helped him navigate it. Yeah. Really gave him an opportunity to achieve the goals, and helped him think of something he could do with all of that energy. I agree. I think a lot of times kids they have hard situations and they need a navigator. They need someone to take what they have and help them get to where they need to go with what they've been given. Many times it's like that first quote we looked at. They're dealing with something going on at home. They're dealing with, whatever the burden or barrier is that they have. And it's so important for someone to come along and help them navigate that or empower them. Encouraged him to channel his energy. Yes. Okay, how about share power? This is a little bit different. Sometimes when we think about relationships with students especially, treat me with respect and give me a say. Respect me, include me, collaborate, let me lead. Do we see any of these kind of elements in the relationship with Mr. Jensen and his student? I kind of liked how he brought him in and talked to him and said, "Have you ever thought about being a drummer?" Yeah, I agree. He respected him. He took him seriously. He gave him the drumsticks. Exactly. We don't know what happens after that. But I think that the one thing I see, and I think you guys said that he took him seriously. He didn't say, go sit on your hands. Like, the principal would say, go sit on your hands. That's how we're going to take care of this. He had someone that saw him and really took him seriously. Like, you have a talent here. Let's use it. Let's, and he gave him the drumstick. So how about the last one? The last element here. Get to click here. There it goes. Expand possibilities. Connect me with people who broaden my world. Do we see him inspire him or broaden his horizons or connect him to people that could help him grow? I think definitely some of the things you guys have mentioned earlier, with him giving him the drumsticks and asking him, have you ever thought about being a drummer? Were definitely things that would expand his possibilities. Something he had never thought about. Yes. Broadened his horizons to not be that kid that was in trouble for banging on the desk all the time. But now, and you watch the end of it, people came along that broadened his horizons and connected him to other things because you saw all the things he did with his life after that. So we can definitely take a look at this video and see all of the things, all of those elements that are identified in this framework for developmental relationships. As we think about the developmental relationship framework, we think about the practices that are in place, things we do every day, those things that are in place for our students. So they know that we are expressing care for them. They know that we're going to challenge their growth. They know that we're going to share power and challenge their growth and all those things. But what kind of practices should we put into place so that we can make sure those happen? One thing you'll see here, as I've taken a little screenshot of another few pages that are in your workbook, and this is a copy that you'll have that you can print out. And what you'll find, and you'll see here, it's on pages 19 through 23, and it basically takes each one of those elements and it goes through and it gives you ideas of things that you could put into practice to be intentional about developing those developmental relationships with the students that you work with and the people you're around. And I would also have you expand your possibilities here in thinking about, these kind of developmental relationships are really can be with adults as well. They're not just with kids. When you think about relationships that really develop the best in other people and develop the best in ourselves, we can see a lot of these practices that can be put in place that would make relationships better across the board with everyone. But like I said, I'll leave these pages on here. They'll be on here as a reference for you, but it goes through and it allows you to say, you know what, this is one I really would like to practice more. Maybe it's asking students to tell you about themselves and listening to their stories. One of them under expressing care is telling students what you like about them. One that I like in providing support under practice is catch students doing something right and tell them, I like how you did that. And I think a lot of times there are several of these things as you look at them that you're going to be like, I do a lot of that. But possibly as you turn over to sharing power or expanding possibilities, maybe there's several of those that you've never thought about. I really could start to expand possibilities by asking for my students' opinions about issues that affect them, or broaden their web of relationships. I could bring people in so they get to know more about opportunities that they may have based on what I know about them and their, what they're able to do, their talents and their the things they are interested in. But those are the pages that you can look at in this workbook, and they really are good to look at to get you thinking about how you might implement and practice more of these developmental relationship elements in your work with students. One thing that the Search Institute found was when two or more of those DR elements in your interactions with young people are used, there's more of an impact, a more relational impact with that interaction. And if you take a look here on this diagram, you'll see that we have express care going across the bottom and challenge growth going up on the left-hand side there. And you can see up in the top right-hand corner there, that the benefit of high challenge and high expressing care is the ultimate, impact for a student that we could have. There's going to be higher care for the student and in the relationship and a great more challenge. So combining those elements just really increases that impact of that type of relationship with a student. So what does research say about developmental relationships and what they, how they impact kids? You can see here that the Search Institute found that each additional developmental relationship is linked to significantly higher levels of caring, higher levels of responsibility, higher levels of social emotional skills, and decision-making skills. These, when they talk about those, each additional developmental relationship, so that could mean like, I have a good developmental relationship with a parent. Maybe I have one with a sibling. Maybe I have one with a teacher at school, and maybe there's an adult at church that I also have one with. Every time they have one of those kind of relationships, it just increases the statistically significant higher levels of these things in those students. We also see through the research that every time an additional developmental relationship is formed, it's linked to lower levels of alcohol use, attempted suicide, and tobacco use. So you can see from both of these areas of research that developmental relationships really go a long way to helping our students and our kids reach their full potential. So how could you use this framework in your work? I'm interested, if you don't care to put something in the chat that you think that you might try some of these ideas with someone you work with. We'll give you a minute here to maybe share how you think this framework might work with the work you do with students. I'll give you a minute. Like I said, our site coordinators use this to understand where kids have maybe an area where they don't have a relationship that could be causing them, some trouble. And this lets them kind of dig a little deeper into how they can work with the students to make sure they have those developmental relationships in place. But I'm wondering how you think you might use some of this in your work. Okay. That's great. Yes, I think as a mental health counselor, I think it is an integral part of what you do. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Be a Mr. Jensen. Yeah. Focus on the positive. Find the things that work with kids and help them to grow. Yeah, totally agree. Thank you. Like I said earlier, the workbook and that brief are both attached to this session. But there's also an activity book that I am happy to send you if you would like to know more about activities that fall under all of these elements that you could use in the work that you do with students. They're great. You can just open them up and it gives you ideas of activities you can do to carry out some of these elements with your students and being intentional about that. Also, if you're interested, I don't have communities and schools in my school, but I would like to hear more about this framework about developmental relationships and how I could have it in my school or how I could use it in the work that I do. If you go on to the Search Institute's website, they have a lot of downloadable free resources that you can access. They also have many professional development workshops that are available. And of course, right now, most of those are virtual. And there's just so many opportunities of things that you can connect to that you may find useful for the work that you do, or someone else that could definitely plug in and need to hear about some of these resources. Of course, as we think about the things that we do with our kids and the things you've just learned today, we think about the seeds that we plant. Once we plant them, in order for them to grow, we've got to water them. So it is important, of course, with what we learned today, that Mr. Jensen video is so impactful. And we're like, oh my gosh, I have to be this kind of a person when I'm with kids. I need to make sure and focus on these 5 elements. But you want to make sure that you revisit these ideas and the connections that you've made today with the work and what you start to think about. And really think about, looking into either the professional development that they offer or the activities that you can make part of your practice all the time with your students that you work with, so that these interactions are reinforced and those relationships will develop and deepen over time. As we finish up today, I just want to give you a moment to ask any questions. There are the emails for Tracy and I both here. Like I said, if you're like, I would like to use some of these activities, would you send me that book? I'm very happy to send you that. If you, I see Cheryl is interested. If you don't care, if you put it in the chat, if you're interested, I'm happy to send that out to you. I think, Stephanie, do we have access to their emails based on where they've registered here?
Yes, we will have email access of those who attend the sessions. I'm also going to put your email in the chat. Sometimes
Okay.
it's easy to copy and paste that from the chat.
Sure. But here at the end, we have a few moments left. I don't know if anyone has a question, or happy to answer them. Okay. I'm not seeing anything, but I do appreciate you guys attending our session today. And if you would like to find out more, please reach out. But otherwise, we will make sure you guys get these resources from our session today. But thank you for joining. We appreciate it.
Thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you so much to Cynthia. What a great presentation with some wonderful resources. Please feel free to visit our gallery area until the next breakout session, and that next session will be at 3:30. So see you there.